I thought of doing some proper Vipassana, as in the interrogation, self-interrogation. That obviously, as we spoke before, can result, if done rightly, in establishments of the mind, in samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, the proper Vipassana of self-interrogation would bring forward samadhi, composure, upon the right themes, wholesome themes, themes free from greed, aversion, delusion. I think the one we done before, it was kind of about suffering, wasn't it? Feeling and suffering.
Feeling, yeah.
But I thought we can do the one in terms of the unwholesome, in terms of sensuality, or in terms of ill will. And again, like it can be done by anyone to oneself. So, for example, right here, right now, is the sensuality present in the background of your mind, in any shape or form?
Is there the desire, or the desire for the wanting of some pleasure based upon
Sure.
the senses?
Sure.
Which there is.
And by the way, I'm not just asking you. I'm putting the question out, and I'll also describe whatever. But yeah, you can say that. Is there a desire for wanting a pleasure on account of sense bases, which is what sensuality is?
Do I entertain a possibility that somehow?
Well, no, that would be the further. No, for now, is there a desire for pleasure of the senses? Yes or no? Just the most generally.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look for every little what if. No, just overall, is my mind now under the pressure of sensuality, or is my mind now not under the pressure of sensuality? That's the question a person should be asking oneself, like right here, right now.
Yes, because I'm sitting in a comfortable position.
Okay.
Maintaining it without me.
But that's not sensuality.
Yeah, but I'm trying to maintain that whenever there's a.
Yeah, but avoiding discomfort is not sensual.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily sensual.
Trying to maintain the comfort.
No, pleasure of sensuality is basically pleasure of the that you can gain through the sense bases engaging with its sensual counterparts. Lust, greed. Are you lustful about sitting in a comfortable chair? No. You have an option, you're sitting. Sometimes it gets uncomfortable in this position. But that's not like, that's what I mean, like, you have to start differentiating the type of pleasure that is unwholesome. Because often people can't see that.
Sure.
So often people will like assume you must forsake everything, every little desire. No, they're desires that are not desires.
Mm-hmm. Avoiding
Discomfort is just intentional for an arahant as well. But I mean, lust, aversion, delusion, sensuality. Is there any, as the Buddha would say, desire in regard to the world, or sort of displeasure in regard to the world, which is rooted on the same domain? Discontent, craving for. So that's the question a proper Vipassana can start with. Is my mind right here, right now, under the pressure of sensual craving, of wanting, the wanting of pleasure of the senses? So the answer will have to be yes or no, on that general level.
Mm-hmm.
Is my mind currently affected with sensuality, as Satipatthana Sutta would say?
As far as I can tell, no.
No, that's fine. So the answer, let's say the answer is no, but I'm not completely sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's how probably many people would answer it. So no, but I'm not completely sure. What does not being completely sure mean? Mean you're not free from doubt. in regard to it. And if you're not free from doubt in regard to a Dhamma, a phenomena, you can't say you're free from it. You can't say you're free from that domain. That's why freedom from doubt for a Sotapanna is like the first step towards the right view. But it's the same principle then that he can develop. Like Sotapanna is not free from sensuality, for example, because he's still not free from doubt in regard to sensual domain. Whereas the Buddha would say he still hasn't fully understood the gratification, the danger, and the escape. You understand that fully means you fully went beyond doubt in regard to the nature of sensuality. And that's a fine starting point. So you can say, no, currently my mind is not under the influence of sensuality, but I'm not completely sure about it. So does that mean that there might be a way that sensuality is influencing you? Maybe. Does that mean there might be a way that sensuality might influence me? Well, that's more like it.
Yeah.
It's basically, you recognize that currently the mind is not under the pressure of sensuality, but you also simultaneously there, but simply by saying, I'm not sure, means the possibility of sensuality, you recognize you are not free.
Yeah. There could be.
Exactly.
Because I know what it is.
And that's the point here. To start discerning the possibility of sensuality that you are still liable to. But that, you can't wait for it to be manifest in the future to deal with it. Possibility, it has to be dealt as possibility. Which means if in the future the sensuality manifests, that's not the possibility now that you're thinking of. Sure, it came through the domain of possibility, but at that time in the future, you're going to another domain of possibility in regard to it. Because possibility is a part of that structural domain of manifested things. Things that are present and its possibilities. It's what gives things the meaning. So that's what I mean. The possibility of sensuality that you implied through the answer, that one will imply if they say, no, currently I'm not oppressed by sensuality, but I'm not quite sure, means, okay, the time will come when I will be oppressed by sensuality. So that also means that the reason that I'm not oppressed now is not fully understood. Why? Why am I not oppressed now? And why I might be oppressed in the future with the next one that comes.
But understanding that...
Understanding that possibility of oppression needs to be done in the presently arisen experience that now you're having Vipassana about. And that's how you overcome the whole domain. Because the root of the domain, sensual domain, domain of anger, domain of unwholesome, is not in the particular manifestation of those. The root is you being liable to the possibility of those. Same with suffering. That's why dukkha is not not necessarily the tremendous, horrific torture, pain and discomfort. Dukkha is opposite of sukha. Literally would be translated as this is, unease. And that's the nature of human experience, dukkha. Not that everybody suffers all the time. Not at all. But possibility all the time in human experience is that of uneasiness that is implied. Why? Because things get at any given moment in the future. So there is a present possibility of things in the future at any given moment going not the way you want them to. That's why the Buddha said fundamentally suffering is basically being separated from things you want, being united with things you don't want. As in united with feelings and perceptions you don't want. Separated from the ones you want. Or just misconceiving the five aggregates, misconceiving the experience as a whole, that's why you suffer. And you misconceive it as you are the one in control, you are the one in charge. But then every next second, when another thing manifests, it can prove you wrong. And you remain liable to that for as long as you maintain assumption that you're in charge. But if you stop maintaining assumption you're in charge, you have surmounted the domain of possibility of being proven wrong, that you are not in control, on account of which you would suffer. So that's what I mean, the possibilities must be understood as possibilities within the presently enduring experience as a whole. It's not like momentary glimpses of figuring out or discerning why and how and working some methodical patterns. None of that. There's a simple question and a simple answer, but you need to know what to look for it, and then you get to see the signs of things that matter. And is my mind currently pressured with sensuality? No. Can my mind be then pressured with sensuality? Maybe. Maybe means yes. Doubt means yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so my mind can be pressured by sensuality. Do I have to wait for that in the future to prove that yes, truly it was pressured? Or I already know that simply by doubting it? You already know it. Because you don't understand the nature of that possible pressure, you're liable to it. And that's your starting point, by the way. Starting point is you're liable to that pressure. It's not like a perfect starting point and then occasionally Putujana makes mistakes and then steps back into sensuality. No. He's Putujana, not free from sensuality, because he hasn't understood that domain of possible pressure of sensuality, possible liability. If liability is possible, means overall you are liable. Not always, but sometimes, and sometimes it's enough for the nature of sensuality to still pertain to you. So if you don't want nature of sensuality to still pertain to you, or nature of doubt, or nature of suffering, or nature of anger, or nature of anything unwholesome, that possibility of pertaining to you needs to be understood and abandoned right here, right now. As possibility. Needs to be discerned. That's why I always talk about the peripheral awareness, the mindfulness of like the signs, because it's on the level of signs and tokens of the presently manifested things. As in, currently, presently, mind is not oppressed by sensuality. But its signs, its tokens, its significance is that it might be in the future. And that's what binds you. The fact that the mind is currently pressured or not pressured, that's basically a result of your liability to that domain in the first place. So in other words, you don't need to wait for it to be pressured to know that you are pressured. You don't need to wait for it to realize that you're not in control, like to be forced upon you through like accidents or whatever things happening. Just the fact that it might happen means you're not in control. That's why you don't need to have anything horrible happen to you in order to become aware of the dukkha, the fundamental sign of human experience. But it won't be seen on the particular basis. That's already a symptom of your liability. So let's get back to the presently.
So there is a possibility.
There is a possibility, exactly.
Which.
So that's it. So now people would generally, like, what the mind would usually do is try to rationalize it. But finding out why or how, because of this or because of that, it's all the result of your liability in the first place to that possibility of suffering or of sensuality or of anger. That's what the Buddha meant hit by the first arrow. He doesn't see that. He's too concerned about figuring out who hit him. What's the name of the clan from the man who shot him? What's the name of this? Who is the surgeon? What did they... No, that's all irrelevant. What is relevant is that you were touched in the first place, as in you're liable to it. So possibility of sensuality is something that the mind is liable to in this presently enduring experience as a whole. So you can let that endure or sink in. You need, okay, I need to figure it out. Start recognizing the phenomenon of enduring possibility as a phenomenon of enduring possibility. What is your attitude then towards possibility of sensuality?
I immediately think I want to be careful.
You want to be careful, okay. Why do you want to be careful?
Because I don't want that possibility to become an actuality.
You don't want to be affected by it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Already am.
Which you already are. Yeah. And that's all fine. There's no like right or wrong answer. Through doing this kind of interrogation, you get to clarify and see signs and tokens of presently enduring phenomena, presently enduring Dhamma, and then the mind starts to discern them as also presently enduring Dhamma on a more peripheral level. And that's how the mind gets established upon the right things, upon non-sensuality, non-greed, non-aversion. So, ask yourself then, or whoever listens to this can ask oneself then, why would I be affected by the possibility of arising, of sensuality arising? Why would I be affected? Maybe. Okay, so how would I clarify that? In the present, not like waiting for the thing, but on the level of possibility. So let's assume that you would be affected, because in the past you always were affected. So then you ask yourself, why am I affected? Why the possibility, right now, right here, right now, possibility of enduring, possibility of arising, of sensuality arising, why am I liable to it, right here, right now?
Because it's a possibility.
Well, yes, but that's clearly not on you. You did not create that possibility.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, what are the characteristics of that possibility?
Oh,
Let's clarify that angle first.
The body.
What are the characteristics of the possibility of sensuality? Presently enduring.
They are characteristics.
How would you describe it, just in any manner?
It's connected to the body.
Absolutely, inseparable from the body.
Characteristics.
Okay, so if something is inseparable from the randomly arisen body that you have no control over, you have no control over your beating heart, over the operating eyes, nose, smell, taste, touch, and so on, and this is inseparable from it, which means possibility of the sense basis of your body. That's what sensuality is. But that also implies it's kind of structural as well. As the Buddha said, I wants to go and feed its own domain. That's what it does. It's like a wild animal. So the 5 wild animals, their feeding grounds and the possibilities of what they could eat, that's just how things are. You haven't created that.
The body.
And that's an important thing to discern.
Yeah.
Because people might think it's on them and then try to prevent this particular thing to be, or that, or interfere with this side. No. Like, of course, restraint needs to be beforehand. You need to restrain the animals in order to understand the nature of the feeding ground and how it affects you. But the possibility of eye feeding on sights is the eye's possibility. Smells, possibility of smells is the nose possibility. Possibility of touch, bodily possibility. So why does that possibility then affect you?
Only if I think it is my possibility.
Exactly. If you appropriate it. So how do you then appropriate it? What is the necessary condition for appropriation that the Buddha said? What is the necessary condition for regarding something as yours?
But for me, regarding it.
Yeah, but why would you regard it as for you? Why would you accept that? Oh, okay, it is for me. If I come with a gun and a bullet and say this is for you, would you say, oh yeah, sure, give it to me, shoot me? You wouldn't.
Yeah. Well.
Why? Because it's unpleasant.
Yeah, the pressure of that.
So whenever there is appropriation, there is welcoming beforehand. That's the necessary basis. There is perceived pleasurability of it. That's why sense of self, as Nyanamoli pointed out, is always developed on the basis of pleasure. That's why the Buddha says, Sabbe Sankara Anicca, Sabbe Sankara Dukkha. You need to see that which is inseparable from this thing that you are taking as yours as actually unpleasurable, as not wanted. So absolutely true. You are affected by the possibilities of sensuality that actually pertain to your senses, not to you. Possibilities are not a problem. They are possibilities. Problem is when you start engaging on account of the possibilities, on account of the pressure of possibilities. But you cannot start engaging with them unless you've taken them as pertaining to you. And the necessary basis for taking anything as pertaining to you is regarding it as dear, pleasurable, agreeable, non-threatening. Hence the Buddha's insistence constantly talking about the seeing the danger, because that's how you uproot. You can't just say, okay, this is not for me anymore. Because if still there is the implication of pleasurability of it, the assumption for me is automatic. So you undo the assumption for me, not by saying, okay, it's not for me, good luck with that, but by actually seeing it as unpleasurable, more fundamentally. And then automatically becomes, ooh, not for me. That's the simile of the charcoal pit. When the Buddha said if the two strong men would come and grab you by the arms and drag you towards and drop you in like a hole dug up full of embers, wouldn't your mind want to be everywhere else except there? Intention will be turning everywhere else except wanting to go into that hole. If you start regarding the possibility of sensual pleasure like that, that's how you stop being liable to the entire domain. That's how whatever particularly actually arises for your eye, nose, smell, taste, touch and so on, it will not induce the sensual domain upon you. That's why the Buddha said Tathagata still sees, hears, recognizes beautiful things in the world, but he has no desire and lust in regard to them. Because he freed himself from the assumption of sensual domain. Assumption of my sensual domain. Assumption of pleasurability of my sensual domain. Then it's just agreeable sight, disagreeable sight. Agreeable, comfortable chair, disagreeable, discomfortable chair. None of that is sensuality, none of that will be anger, none of that will be suffering, none of that will be a problem. And all this just on the basis of a couple of right questions and right attitude in regard to it. And that's what Vipassana truly is. That's why we would say he investigates the meaning to himself, questions himself, or if he sees somebody who might know more, understand more, he goes and gets himself interrogated, basically. Because that's how you unravel. Yeah, you know these things to some extent, but you really want to discern them on the basis of the present enduring mindfulness of the experience as a whole. And see, all of what we talked, the basis hasn't changed. Mind is presently not pressured by any sensuality. Oh, but how about possibility of it? Am I fully certain, free from the extent of sensual domain? I don't know. That's your starting point. You don't know means you're not. Why aren't you? Because it doesn't pertain to you, as you just clarified it. It pertains to the senses. Oh, it's because I'm still actually regarding it as dear and agreeable. That's why the Buddha said you should regard your senses and the mind, I think, in itself as well, like the assassins. Like the best friend that comes and gets your trust and then just wants to kill you at night. Not like you go paranoid all the time. Just recognize, no, I just need to stop regarding this possibility of sensuality as not my friend. Dangerous, perilous, charcoal pit, burning embers, skin disease, all the similes the Buddha gave. Not everything all the time. Miserable, hate. No. Just that degree where you're liable to it, and the possibilities where you're liable to all of it because of it. So if you stop welcoming that possibility that pertains to the senses, not to you, then that possibility stops bothering you. If you're not liable to the possibility of sensuality, can you then be liable to anything that manifests itself through that possibility of sensuality? Absolutely no.
Whatever possibility becomes more possible. Like here and now, there might be whatever possible.
Well, you're not thinking about the particular future, this might be possible. You're thinking about possibility in its nature.
Yeah.
As in, currently I'm not pressured by any sensual cravings. Can I say that will be the same for the future? Means.
But if there is a sensual craving that comes.
As a possibility.
Not as a possibility.
Well, it won't be a sensual craving.
Yeah.
If you freed yourself from the possibility of sensual craving. Like any particular manifestation of sensuality. Say the answer is, are you presently oppressed by sensual craving? The answer is yes. Yes, my mind is just thinking about this sensual object.
Yeah.
So based on that, okay, so can you then say that in the future you'll be free from sensuality? No, because even now you're not free.
Yeah.
So the first step, what? Restrain. You don't go for a sensual object. But now the pressure of it has been revealed. Again, same questioning. Why, instead of why would I be pressured in the future, just start with why am I pressured now?
Because the possibility here and now for engaging here and now, possibility to engage now. So if I'm obsessed with cake, and there's a cake right in front of me.
Sure.
So yesterday I said, oh, there's a possibility that if I see a cake in the future, I will be pressured to go for it.
Sure.
Now, today, there is a cake in front of me.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
But now the possibility for engaging with that cake is still there. But if I've surmounted that possibility yesterday, I'm still surmounting it today, even if the cake is presented.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's the whole point.
Because the possibility is still there.
Yeah. Well, no, the cake is presented, the possibility is there, but your surmounting of the possibility didn't end yesterday. Because the possibility is not, it's present, enduring right here and now, and it was the same possibility that you had in the past, it will be the same possibility you have in the future.
Yeah. Whether
so by surmounting the possibility, you have surmounted your past sensuality, and you're surmounting any future engagement with sensuality. And that's exactly what the Buddha said.
Regardless of what object.
Like the one who surmounts the sense of self correctly, sees it presently, he doesn't think in the past I was, and he doesn't think in the future I will be. Because by seeing it correctly, that possibility of mistake of I am right here, right now, his past is included in it, and the future is included in it. Why? Because they're all subordinate to the presence of that possibility. So the mind is still not oppressed currently. Possibility of it? Possibility of the mind being oppressed by the unwholesome? You could just even stay with that question for a while as well, because it will clarify the domain of the possibility without overly particularizing it, so to speak, overly rationalizing it, nor mystifying it either. Am I liable to being affected by the unwholesome? Don't rush answering it. And you'll see that what you are thinking about, what you are kind of refraining from an answer to an extent, is the domain you asked about, is the domain that you need to understand. And often the reason why people don't understand it is because they don't see it, because they never ask the question in the right way, as a way of establishing the mind. Like that's how even jhanas are established. That's the Mahamoggallana, when the Buddha encouraged him to practice steady his mind in jhanas, because it would be much to his fruit and benefit. He goes under the root of a tree and says, first jhana, what is the first jhana? Well, the Buddha described it, said it's this, it's the presence of this, it's the presence of this factor or that factor, whatever you translate it. And then he was understanding it, through understanding it, he entered it. Oh, can I do more of this? As in further development of the same principle, yes, second, third, fourth. So by asking the question, am I liable to the pressure of the unwholesome? Am I liable to the pressure of sensuality? Am I liable to sensuality? Am I liable to ill will? And not like, yes, no, well, this means that, and overly rationalizing it, or providing psychologizing answers. Just by staying with that question for a while, you're staying with the domain that you directed your question to. And that's how you start to discern the domain. By not jumping to give an answer, but instead discerning the answer on account of the enduring domain that you asked about. So you could somebody can just spend a day having the mind established upon this question of being liable to unwholesome. Just spend your day with that being an implication of your day, whatever you do. That unwholesome, you might be liable to it. And then you'll see when a particular unwholesome arises, you realize, yes, this could have only arisen on the overall liability towards the possibility of unwholesome. But it's not that possibility has become this particular one. No, they're two separate domains. So the possibility of my liability to unwholesome states throughout the day, and then you get an unwholesome state, there is still a possibility of being liable. That's now also verified on the present level. But you stop caring about the present level in that direct manner, because you realize that's not where the problem is. The problem is on the level of the mind and being affected by the domain of it, the domain of possibility of sensuality, ill will, and so on. And also, if you become mindful of your liability towards unwholesome, that in itself, that mindfulness becomes a protection against unwholesome actually affecting you. You might not be completely out of it, but mindfulness of the possibility of unwholesome affecting you means no particular unwholesome can affect you. Mindfulness of the fundamental liability to dukkha means no particular dukkha can affect you. Because it's not about removing that, you can't remove that possibility, because it's not yours to begin with. So you realize all you have to do is develop mindfulness in regard to it, to the extent necessary, whereby you stop entertaining slightest notion that this is pleasurable and for me. That's it. And that's often the problem. People overshoot the mark. They don't see where the problem is, then they overdo it, and they end up denying things. I must stop thinking, I must stop looking, I'm a blind, deaf man becomes the goal. I must not do this, I must not do this, I must not do this. Because you don't know what to do, you start denying everything. Yeah, you must not engage with sensuality or with ill will on a particular basis. It means the body needs to be restrained, speech needs to be restrained. Mind needs to be restrained, and the restraint of mind is through restraint of understanding the possibility of being liable to it in the first place. But you blaming the possibility and trying to get rid of it means you not seeing where the problem is. So a person, instead of, oh no, like all this, I must stop thinking about it, it's impossible. Because I is thinking about sights. Animals want to feed, and that's what we'll say. You tie them in, they will be thinking about their feeding grounds, where they used to go and eat and do stuff. That's not your problem. The problem is, why am I emotionally bothered by this, literally? So, pressure of sensuality will arise again in the future. Why, or will I be emotionally affected by that? If the answer is yes, why? Why am I emotionally affected by this? And you realize, people would realize that they would be emotionally affected by this because they never dwelt long enough on the fact that you can't be emotionally affected by it even if you want to. As in, you can't have it be yours even if you want to, because it isn't. You haven't created it, it's not bound with you. Its own sankharas are respective senses, inseparable from. So all you need to do is then, all you need to do is stop regarding it wrongly, and then it will stop affecting you. And you stop regarding it wrongly if you start seeing it, no, this is dangerous. So how you arrive at that, regarding it as a danger, it's up to the person itself. Whether through simple faith in the Buddha as being ultimately right, knowing what he's talking about, and you already have verified a great deal of it, so you just have faith. Well, he said himself, it's worth regarding it as dangerous, it's going to have tremendous benefit. I don't quite know how, but I'll do it. And yeah, that's enough to do it, that basis of faith, which will then result in knowledge. Or if you need more of like Vipassana and self-questioning, hammering it further, fine. You're going to arrive at the same conclusions, because that's what the Buddha did say. He didn't fabricate like a false advertisement. No. So the possibility of sensuality affects a person presently because he still wants the pleasure of it. He hasn't seen pleasure of it. He might have seen how various sensual objects are ugly, repulsive, dissatisfactory, dangerous, but he hasn't seen that pleasure in regard to them is dangerous. Why? Because he kept looking on the level of the objects. But pleasure is neither in the sight nor in the eye. It's in regard to the two. Pleasure of the touch is neither in the that which is touching you, the object of the touch, nor your body. It's in regard to the two. So it needs to be seen for what it is. And that so there's nothing, this pleasure is not, no, it's real. It's a real pleasure. That's why you understand the gratification of it. But you understand that that pleasure is dangerous. So you rewrite the significance. You rewrite the signs and tokens of sensual pleasure, which is factual. But instead of dear, agreeable, welcoming, non-threatening, is seen as threatening, murderous, dangerous, perilous. Same pleasure. But in order to rewrite those signs and tokens, you need to see it for what it is. Otherwise, you won't be applying it to the right level. That's what I mean, like when if a person presents a question, so, okay, currently I'm not bothered by any sensuality or ill will, but can I be bothered? Will I be bothered? Yeah, maybe, probably. That is a presently arisen experience, that probability. And instead of jumping at answer, stay mindful of that peripheral probability. That's the domain I'm talking about. Okay, so now I'll go talk, eat, walk, sit, lay down, while probability of being affected by unwholesome still remains. Now you might want to be keen to get rid of it. Well, you might be keen to solve it, to figure it out, to free yourself from it, and that's good. But what it's not good is when that becomes craving for getting rid of it. That means, you're bound by it again. So you need to allow it to exist to its own extent, the possibility of sensuality, not actual engagement with sensuality. And then stop denying it, stop trying to get rid of it, because that's not on you either. It's like blaming the things that your dog wants to eat. You can't, it's ridiculous. That's what the sense wants to eat. That's what animals feed on. That's just how it works. By you deriving emotional pleasure from engaging with that type of food on account of I, that's on you. Or emotional dissatisfaction on account of lack of the food for your I, that's on you. So you develop emotional indifference in regard to the pleasure in regard to the whole sense domain. That's how you free yourself from the sense domain. That's what we spoke before. You stop wanting the wanting of sensual pleasure by your senses. You don't stop wanting of your senses directly, because they're not yours to begin with. You restrain them, sure, to create a basis for the work, but then you stop wanting their wanting, and that's how you sever your liability to anything unwholesome, pretty much. And yeah, that possibility of liability for somebody who has developed his mind in regard to it, well, it still stays the possibility of sensuality, but the liability is gone, as in you are not you went beyond it. The domain of sensuality with possibility remains. That's why Arahant can still discern it, but he went beyond it. He didn't dismantle the structure of I and the sights as people would sometimes try to do, which is like a wrong view of a shortcut. No, he went beyond it.
That is the possibility of the body.
Exactly.
In the world.
Yeah. But he's not liable to engaging with it anymore. Hence, the beautiful sights still remain. Sound, smell, taste, touches. Agreeable, disagreeable, comfort, discomfort. But none of that's sensual anymore.
Because he sees the danger.
Well, he's seen the danger.
He's seen the danger in the pleasure.
And he's seen the danger in the pleasure to the extent necessary for that liability to be completely rewritten on the level of signs and tokens and nimittas of it. So now when sensuality arises, there are no nimittas of subha and agreeable, beautiful. They're nimittas of this has been despised and abandoned and dangerous and disgusting. That's what it means now. Because there is genuine danger discussed in it. By you being gratuitously bound to the enjoying pleasure of it, you don't see it. And I'm saying this because whoever would try to practice this, inevitably the mind will then try to get rid of this possibility, as in that would be the way of fixing the problem, but it isn't. The way of fixing the problem is developing your mind in regard to that possibility. That's what I mean, like sometimes it's good to not even try and answer the question, just formulate it clearly and let it endure. First jhana, what is first jhana? Domain of sensuality. What is the domain of sensuality? The liability to sensuality. What is my liability? Let it endure. Then there will be a phenomenon that you might want to kind of overly define, but that's not the point. The point is to rewrite the emotional significance of it, so to speak. So liability of sensuality, why? Because I'm welcoming it. Because fundamentally, I do not see it as the most perilous thing. Of course, if you don't even have a notion, not even a peripheral degree of sort of recognition of the liability to sensuality, how can you rewrite anything about it? Because you're fully encapsulated within it. That's why even if somebody lives their life perfectly restrained for the rest of their life, still remain bound with sensuality, because they haven't understood that domain, that liability. So you don't want to be rewriting the liability as in the content of your liability. You want to be rewriting basically your attitude towards the liability. That's how you rewrite its significance. So you could say somebody who practices rightly is liable to suffering, but then he ceases to be liable to that liability of suffering. As in the body is liable to suffering. None of that he is liable to. That's why Ajahn says any disturbance that's left, it's on account of this body, these 5 aggregates until they break apart. Disturbance, that's in most the suffering can want to be for an Arahant. Disturbance, not suffering really. And if the mind is developed in regard to jhanas, then even that disturbance won't be perceived. So clarifying the enduring liability to suffering or sensuality of anything unwholesome is not for the sake of getting rid of it, it's for the sake of clarity of it. Having it endure. Because as long as you're mindful of your liability to sensuality, you cannot possibly engage with sensuality on a particular level. The necessary basis for particular engagement with sensuality is oversight of the liability to sensuality in the first place. That's what Buddha meant. It's impossible to engage with sensuality without having already been bound by sensual perceptions. Because discerning the liability of sensuality is already perceiving sensuality on that level of possibility. Those are already sensual perceptions. If you're mindful of them, don't welcome them, don't entertain them for as long as they endure, that's all you need to do. That's a gatekeeper who then realizes, I don't need to go and worry about the particular manifestation of it, because it won't be a problem because I'm not abandoning this gatepost. My mindfulness, peripheral awareness of the liability to unwholesome.